Hey guys, it's William Christopher Ford. I'm back here at the Kaizen Dojo in Torrance, California, where I spend much of my time. And today my very special guest is my good new friend, Steve.
How's that?
I got the shaka iPod. So Steve is not a martial artist, correct?
No, not at all.
Not yet.
Zero.
Not yet.
But I kind of look like it, right? I got the eyes for it.
You totally fit that profile.
Yeah.
However, the interesting story is that Steve's wife, Karen, and I go back, and we were both students at our sensei's dojo, Sensei Richard Rabago, and your wife made it up to brown belt, I believe.
She throws me all the time.
I'm sure she does.
Yeah, it hurts.
You know, she looks like she can handle herself pretty well. You know?
Yeah, no, she's a brute. She's a brute.
Without doubt. And we had a chance to kind of reconnect. There was a screening for a film that Steve produced. It's still in its, it's done, but they're kind of screening it for feedback, called Shaka, right? And what's
Shaka, A Story of Aloha.
Shaka, A Story of Aloha. So when my wife told me about it, it was being screened at the Buddhist church. I was like, oh, I'm all over that. I want to go see that. I like independent films. And then
you like Hawaii.
I like Hawaii, you know, and we have family there. And then we see Karen's brother Lester there, and then we see the Watanukis there, and then we see Karen there, and we had no idea that she was connected to you, and through all that, everybody started talking, and that brings us back to here, to a karate dojo,
And
which
you're all
is
with us right here.
and we're right here, and that's what brings us here. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh.
Super cool.
Yeah, and the film was really, really cool, and it's like almost there, and it's just got to have a little bit of fat trimmed from it,
That's what we think,
but it's good fat. It's a good kind of fat. You know? It's like having an avocado, right?
Yeah, that's right. If only we could shape our bodies that way. Just load it with fat and just trim off the parts that you don't like.
There you go.
Yeah, but that's not really how it works. Yeah.
Well, you started off as like a designer and an artist and many other things. Filmmaking wasn't something that was like you opened up a fortune cookie and said,
Yeah.
you will be a filmmaker one day. That wasn't even a consideration some years ago.
Zero.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. Your film opens up with this beautiful quote, and it's, "The world will turn to Hawaii for world peace," because Hawaii has the key, and the key is aloha. And that is a super powerful way to open a film. It just grabbed me right away, and I was like, what is this? And I was intrigued about the whole idea of doing a documentary film about not only where this came from, because I've done this in pictures, and people from Germany have, messaged me and going, William, what is this? What does this mean?
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's shaka. And then I also realized that I didn't know much about, okay, where did it come from? I had heard something about, fingers being cut off and things like that.
Well, that's good. You're further than most.
Well, I'd heard about it through like, one of my, I trained briefly in hula, and Uncle Randy Chang had told me about, this was going to be part of surf culture as well. So I was like, well, this is intriguing. And then your film just kind of takes a deep dive into the rabbit hole and goes and all these different stories. And you actually went and did the research. And, as a result, we have this film. But I'd like for you to talk a little bit about, how you got started in this, and, we can talk story and kind of go along with this. And let me tell you about some of my favorite parts of the film as we go along. But, we want to talk about this film.
So first of all, William, you know that 9 out of 10 people in the state of Hawaii, born and raised there, have no clue where the shaka came from. And I have this data because a local advertising agency called Anthology donated what they call an omnibus survey. So they go out and interview all these people, like 400, 500 people.
Okay.
They aggregate the results. 9 out of 10 people have no clue where the shaka came from, yet the same 9 out of 10 want to see a picture on it.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of a good formula. If you guys want to be filmmakers, go find the story that people want to hear about, because you might have a few people show up for a screening then. And even at that, it's hard. So I got started on the shaka quest many years ago, before COVID. And I just happened to have this friend, his name is Randy Kuba, and he was doing this spirits. It's Okinawan. You're part of Okinawan, right?
think my mother's father was Okinawan and her mother was Japanese.
Okay.
And my wife's family, they're Okinawan. So
my wife is 100% Okinawan.
Yes, Uchinanchu.
Yeah, and so Uchinanchu, right?
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
and we
Yes,
went
sir.
there, and it's like super cool.
Yeah.
One thing I learned about Uchinanchu stuff is they would ask me, "Are you Okinawan?" And I'm like, "Oh no, I'm pre-Okinawan." And they're like, "What does that mean? What does that mean, right?" And so it's because if you go to Okinawa, all the temples, they look like Forbidden City.
Right.
So there's a theory that Okinawas originally came from China, then the Portuguese came and added their blood, and then the Japanese came and kind of conquered it all.
Yeah. There's that whole thing. Yeah, for sure.
So I was working with this guy, and he was doing this spirit called awamori,
Okay.
which is Okinawan distilled
yeah.
spirits from either potatoes or rice.
Gotcha.
And he wanted to sell more of the spirit. And being a designer, I'm like, oh, I'll do the brand for you.
Okay.
And so I'm thinking, what brand should it be from Hawaii? And we thought this would be a good idea, Shaka.
Yeah.
So we call it Shaka Spirits. I started to do all of the research behind it. And then I realized this is a really big story, and it really deserves to be kind of away from spirits, because spirits to me, I don't know, they're okay. They're, some people like it, some people don't. There's definitely a downside to them, the things it does to society and individuals. So I've been kind of living my life to live on the positive side of things. And so how can I flip this to something that's really useful and fun? And so that I started going out and asking people in the community, well, what does this mean and where did it come from? Because I didn't know where it came from. I'm one of the 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
And then I realized, wow, this is completely like the brand of Hawaii. Yet nobody's really told this story. And so some of the stories that come to the surface are, oh, there's a man that might have lost his fingers, or surfers used it to signal sharks were coming, or it came from marbles playing. It came from the leprosy colony on Molokai. It came from drinking in Portuguese. So I started to Google it. And I realized this is actually pretty interesting. And you don't really know what the definitive story is. Even in our picture, we're presenting all alternative origin stories and letting the audience decide for themselves what they would have.
Gotcha.
And because it's not, to me, the historical side of it is one thing, but what is the meaning of it? How do you use it? How do you make the world a better place with it? That's the key.
Yeah.
And so one of my friends, he's like, if you want to know about the Shaka, go to Laie and talk to my Auntie Kayla. And so Auntie Kayla Miller, is kind of a wheel up there. She's like the kapuna. Kapuna is a wise person, an elder, and she's the kapuna of kapuna. Everybody's, if she says go, you run.
Okay.
She said, jump, how high.
How high, yeah.
Yeah, she's like the sensei of that side of the island.
Yeah, and she's
on Oahu.
And she is prominently featured in your film, and I feel that she is the voice of the film, other than yourself. I like the fact that you're in the film also because you represent we as the viewers who are on the quest with you.
Yeah.
But she is the guide throughout the thing, and it's nice that you keep coming back to her.
I'm like the guy crawling up the mountain, and she's like the Sifu at the top.
I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. Yeah, I totally got that with her.
I'm the Sherpa.
And how open were...
By the way, did you see 14 Peaks?
I didn't... Oh, you know what I did? I did. That was amazing.
Was it 14 Peaks over 8,000 meters? The Sherpas climb it like 6 months. The one guy, the European guy that does it in like 16 years. So it's an incredible film. At the very end of the film, they have this big like celebration party in this village, and they're getting in the car, the SUV, to drive off into the sunset to their next adventure. It's very beautiful, and you're like, wow, I love these guys now. I don't want them to leave. And the climber, he turns around to camera, and he goes like that, right to camera. He throws a shotgun. And then he gets in the car, he starts to drive off, and then his number 2 guy, he climbs out the window, and he shakas the camera. The shaka is all about extreme.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the surfers had a big part of that, right?
Right.
But the surfers took it out, and it goes to Brazilian jiu-jitsu,
Yes.
snowboarding, everything, right? It's out there in this big way, and it really is the sentiment that comes out of the story in Hawaii.
Yeah.
So there's a whole lineage to how did this progress through the world, but also what does it mean and why? And there's all these layers of that I discovered along the way. So I go to Laie, which is on the north shore of the island of Oahu, where I live, and I talked to Auntie Kela, and Auntie Kela says, "Oh, here's the story of the shaka, but it's important that we tell this to the next generation.
Okay.
So can you help me tell this?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know, because I'm not Hawaiian descent, and I thought it was kind of a Hawaiian story. Auntie Kela's 100% Hawaiian.
Yeah.
Most of the elders in that community are 100% Hawaiian. So she begs me. She says, let's do this. This is important to document because the keiki, the children, they consume social media. They consume TV. They consume movies.
Right.
But they don't really consume chants and hula and even song as a storytelling environment.
Sure.
And it's a pretty deep story that is more than a song, the length of a song. So I made her a deal. I said, I'll come with a camera crew because I had a crew that owed me some time. And we go up there and shoot 6 people in half a day. And these 6 elders were so galvanizing. Like, this is really a big story. So I packaged those 6 interviews with a summary. And I'm going to give these to the Bishop Museum, which is where they have the archives in Hawaii. So I figured any filmmaker wants to do this, they can take this content, go make the picture. And about a year later, Kamehameha Schools, which is a big funder in our state, probably one of the most wealthy nonprofits in the world, they review our nonprofits program. So I eventually produced this film under my nonprofit, a 501c3 in Honolulu, called ID8. And so they look at these papers like, these are all our programs. And they're like, this one we got to be a part of. And I'm like, that's for a film. You guys do that? And they go, yeah, we have to be a part of this. And you need to tell the story because you started it. And I thought, well, geez, if Auntie Kela wants me to do it, and if Kamehameha Schools wants me to do it, then maybe if there's a couple other ingredients, then maybe we'll do this.
Yeah.
So I said, well, can you provide cultural consultants? Because this has to be completely legit and authentic to the story and to the islands. They said, of course. And they gave me 3 top people.
Okay.
Fantastic job, by the way. And then they said, how much money do you need? And I'm like, oh, think fast, Steve. And so I'm like, $500,000? And the lady, she goes, is that all?
That's it.
Yeah. All right. Oh, I should have asked for $500,000. And in the end, we needed $500,000 because the story got longer.
Okay.
So there's more camera time, more editing.
So you asked for $250,000 and they said, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Phew. That's it. Okay, yeah.
But then it turned out to be not enough. And so we're constantly raising more money.
I understand.
And then once you get down the path of you're covering the story, then it becomes like, well, this is historical record, and we have one chance to do it right.
Yeah.
So if we don't get it right, that's on us, right? It's ours to mess up, and so we don't want to mess it up.
What do you think that Auntie trusted you so much? After that first meeting, she just said
they just have a vibe about people.
And didn't you say that? When you actually went there to film with the elders, like the weather was like windy and raining, but when your crew showed up, the clouds parted and the sun came out. So it was like you're receiving some kind of like...
Yeah, so there's one day, maybe about a year into the production, the shooting, that Auntie Kela, she says, Steve, the ancestors talked to me last night, and they told me why you're supposed to do this picture.
Gotcha.
And I said, what is that? And she goes, well, they told me through the weather. And I said, what does that mean? And she says, every time you guys come up to Laie, the clouds part, the wind stops. It's a windward side of the island, first of all. It rains a lot there because the mountains are there. And she says, every time you guys come up, it's been windy, rainy, weeks on end, months on end. You guys come. Every time you come, the wind stops, the rain stops, the clouds part, it's sunny, Just every time it's beautiful, and you actually see it in the film. It's like it always looks sunny on that side of the night, and people go, "How come it always looks sunny? Did you guys wait a lot?" And no, it just happened. We were lucky, and so she thinks it's not luck. She thinks it's the ancestors speaking to her.
Gotcha.
And so I'm not going to question that. I'm like, okay, good, bought in.
Yeah. But
more important than that, I think that they really want the story told, and they know that. I tried to be extremely respectful in gathering the story. So, and you do interviews, so you know, let them run, right? If it's an elder, they got to tell you the long story. Let them tell the story. So the first half a dozen interviews, let them tell any story they want. By the 60th interview, I'm doing it a little different. I'm like, because I'm filling in the blanks. I'm getting more specific interviews for very specific subplots.
Sure.
Because I've kind of framed the whole thing.
Yeah.
But then it's like, oh, you know what, Uncle? This story is a good story. I want you to tell me it, but not on camera because I don't want to waste your time. We can't use it in the picture.
Okay.
And so there's an eloquent way to do it.
Yeah.
You know, to cut them off at the knees.
Sure.
And they don't mind it because they want their camera time to be good. And you know, I want to make sure you look good on camera.
Yeah.
I want maximum time on camera with the best story.
I use that technique too.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's respectful. It's not just like, you know, blindsiding them, involving them in the process.
Right. And you want them to look at their best.
Yeah.
And you need to tell your story in a way that's effective and efficient and concise. But
completely.
Not shortchanging the genuine authenticity that they're coming with their own aloha.
That's right.
Yeah.
And they have to be comfortable, right? Because if they're not comfortable in front of the camera, then it's not a conversation anymore. It's like they're playing to the camera and it's all presentational.
Yeah.
I should look like this, and
sure.
And their voice changes and their body language changes.
They're using a deeper broadcast voice.
Yeah,
and Steve.
And they're crossing their arms. It's like we want them to be free, right?
I wanted to ask you about Auntie Laverne, rest in peace, rest in power. She, was one of the key elders that you interviewed, and after you talked to her, she has passed away.
Yeah.
She has transitioned. But she was afraid of being interviewed. She had a real bad case of the nerves, right? And didn't think she was going to do it. So you kind of tricked her, yeah?
Yeah, I wouldn't say tricked her, but I helped her.
Okay. So that's a better way of putting it.
I helped her in a way that she didn't know I was helping her.
There you go, because basically you hot mic'd her and didn't tell her you were filming, and by the time she said, when are we going to start the interview? It was like, oh, it's already done. Right?
For politicians, hot micing is not such a good thing, right?
Yeah.
But for interviewees that are not on camera all the time, a hot mic can be a very good thing. And
absolutely.
Long interviews, it's like oftentimes we found after we've finished the interview, packed away the lights, packed away the cameras, and we're just sitting on the side, hanging out. The best stuff comes out because they're relaxed and they're not playing to anything, not worried. They're just real.
Gotcha.
And so then I started realizing, if we hot mic them, and this one lady in particular, she was terrified. She calls me for this interview. She calls me the night before. She goes, Steve, I cannot do the interview. I'm too nervous. I get too nervous. And then in the morning, she calls me and she goes, I didn't sleep a wink last night. I cannot do the interview.
I gotcha.
And so I said, Auntie, we bought some bread for you guys, and I just want to drop by, omiyage, a gift.
Sure.
And so she goes, oh, yeah, okay, come by. So we go by, and I said, Auntie, if you feel like there's anything at all you could share, we'd love to get it, and maybe you can just show me some of your photo album pictures. And there's actually one scene in there where there's two fishermen, and that's my husband. And that's that part of it.
Yeah.
And people lose themselves when they start looking at the pictures. They don't know there's a camera. They don't know there's an interviewer.
Yeah.
It's a real moment, and that's kind of the whole point of the picture is to get these real connections.
Yeah.
Human connections, and so she's showing me this stuff. And of course, I had my guys hot mic her. And so she's sitting there and she's telling me all these things. And eventually she goes, okay, so maybe I can help you. But when can we do the interview? And I'm like, oh, Auntie, it's done already. And she's like, whoa, what? Yeah. And you see her all over the picture. She's so real. And, in this train scene we do, and she's mimicking this man on the train. And you literally see this woman, she's gone backwards in time to when she was probably 6 or 7. And the joy that's in her eyes, her reliving her youth, forgetting the pain that's in her body. Every time I watch that scene, I tear up. I'm like, oh, that's exactly what I want in an interview. And I mean, I'm a first-time filmmaker. I didn't know how to interview. I had to kind of hoof it and figure it out along the way. And when I see it on tape, then I go, that's what we're after. We're after opening up these people and really sharing and having a human connection. And even if I'm not on camera, which the vast majority, I'm not, right? It's a one-person interview. But what I'm looking for is their reaction shot, basically. Because I ask a question that's really piercing, it makes them think. It's not a yes/no response. They're going to share a story.
Absolutely.
Tell me how this type of thing works. You know, that's not a yes/no story, right? You got to tell it.
Yeah.
So if I can get them to just talk to me and they forget about everything, it melts, all the cameras and lights melt away, then we achieve something great, because the stuff that comes out is really legit.
And it's there. I mean, you know, you did a good job with that for sure.
Well, thanks.
You know, and I think that it seemed to me that, you know, because of her health issues and whatnot, and she really needed to tell the story, you going with your crew and interviewing her and allowing her to tell her story was what maybe she really needed. And maybe she found her own peace by being able to finally document the story and say, okay, it's not going to die with me, it gets passed on. And maybe you guys did something really good for her that allowed her to finally
With
say,
her in particular, I really feel we completed her life, because she got to say her piece.
Gotcha.
And she got to relive, you know, a lot of scenes in her life in front of the camera, and now it's preserved. And,
Gotcha.
There's one test screening that we did, and I got a response in the survey, and the survey response comes back and it says, "Thank you for giving me just a few more minutes to live with my auntie." Pretty powerful, yeah.
Chicken skin. Yeah.
Tears eyed.
Yeah, I can feel that. I felt that right now.
Yeah.
Wow. Important work. And, you know, what's funny is that we're talking about this, how the shaka has become this worldwide phenomenon. You know, one of my martial arts mentors, I call him Uncle Gerald.
Yeah.
Uncle Gerald Okamura, who's very famous. He was in Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah.
He's always coming out here. And he loves being Gerald Okamura. He's a celebrity, a very nice guy, but he likes to have this real, stern persona. But he gave me this shaka bra cup. I
like that.
Because, sometimes he comes and asks, hey, can I use your studio for an interview? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, you need money? I'm like, no, I don't need money, Uncle. Just come. And then he always brings me stuff, right?
That's
so this is one of the things he brought me.
That's more valuable than money.
For sure. And I just was
energy.
like, I hadn't really paid much attention to it until, you came today. And I was like, oh, look at this Gerald Okamura. I was like, wait a second.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
Yeah, it's
shaka,
there.
Right? Yeah.
So it just permeates, all throughout the entire world. I also wanted to give a shout. I saw a podcast. You sent me a link to a podcast you did called, I think, Keep It Aloha. With Kamaka Diaz. And
that guy's the bomb.
I just enjoyed. If he's watching this, props to you. You did a good job, and I think you're up and coming, and I really.
He's arrived. No, he's a big deal in our state.
Well, I think he's great, and it's the first time I'd actually discovered him. So no disrespect if you've already arrived, but we're always in a state of arriving.
He is somebody.
But I was like, oh, this guy's cool, and I liked his vibe.
The best thing about him is he doesn't think of himself as somebody. He's like, in fact, he was the MC at the Hawaii International Film Festival Awards show this year.
Okay.
And so we're sitting there. It's like, oh, that's Kamaka. And my wife loves Kamaka. She said, that guy's the best. And he opens his whole thing at HIF.
Gotcha.
And he says, yeah, I think they wanted the other Kamaka, not me. It's completely hat in hand, and it makes him extremely endearing.
That's what I thought. So for what it's worth, I did subscribe to your channel, and I did give you a like. I think they should change those likes to like the shakas, though. Like instead of having a thumbs up and a thumbs down,
Kamaka will take care of it.
They should have a thumbs down, a thumbs up, a shaka, and then maybe like a Japanese tourist peace sign, that kind of thing. So
did you ever watch the movie with Winston Churchill?
Is that the one with Gary Oldman playing him? Or
I don't know. He's an old guy.
Okay.
if that counts. But he does like the peace sign like this instead of like this.
Yeah,
or the other. When one means up yours and one means he didn't even know it.
Yeah, this is the one with this one facing the this is definitely more vulgar.
Yeah.
This one can be like peace.
Yeah.
You're a Japanese girl tourist.
Yeah.
It depends.
And okay, also it
depends on its context.
Not good in South America, right?
But in Japan, right, where they have the Buddhism, the shaka, you see the statues and they're doing this, right?
That's right.
But in more recent times, this has become used. It's sort of been hijacked by certain groups that use it as sort of like a racist, sort of almost an Aryan thing because the W it represents a W.
So, I heard that. Yeah,
it's kind of been,
but no other meaning for the shaka.
No.
Which is fortunate. Although, so the emoji, it's actually call me. It's not a shaka. So people use it. So we're applying.
They need to flip it, right?
Well, no, but so it's basically this way. It's horizontal.
Okay.
And it's call me.
Gotcha.
And you have to have the flying elbow for call me. And you would never do a shaka like this.
Gotcha.
And what you'll learn is that the shaka is a strong man's flex the bicep, bring your elbow in this way. So I want to apply for the emoji that's not like this, but it goes 45 degree.
I got you.
And interestingly, if you have one of those emoji readers, like in your car, and it reads your text messages, it won't say William is shocking you. It'll say William wants you to call you.
Oh, gotcha.
So for hearing impaired, that emoji is completely not useful.
I got you.
Yeah. So we're applying for. We have to apply to this organization called Unicode, and we have the whole thing written up, and it's with art and ready to go.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So our goal is to get an actual shaka emoji.
That's fantastic. And I've heard that this praying thing is actually two people giving each other a high five.
Is that right?
I don't know about that, but I always use it as like thank you or please or whatever, right? But it's like, that's a high five?
That's difficult because if you use it as like, oh, I'm so sorry that your uncle died, high five. That's not good.
Well, that's why it's always good. Text is limited. You can't read tone in text. And so that's why it's always better to call somebody and let's have a conversation.
And whoever calls anybody anymore, it's like, you have to text somebody and say, can I call you? It's so rude. It's like, if I get a call come in, I think it's got to be somebody that's at least 80.
Right?
Yeah, who calls anymore?
Yeah.
And
maybe on a rotary phone. Remember those?
Or we just take that and we just make it the shaka sign.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. I wanted to talk about a few more things before I let you go, because I know you and Karen got to go visit your auntie today, and I think that's important. So we want to kind of wrap some things up, but I wanted to talk about things that we have to talk about, and that's Hamana Kealihi. I like that story very much. I have an affinity for trains, but the whole idea of this man who lost his 3 fingers and working at the sugar plantation, right, and maybe losing it by being on those trains, when the trains connect, and that kind of makes perfect sense. And then having the kids, and you'll see this in the film where they reenact it, where the kids are trying to jump on the train, and if he's there, then they go like this, right, to indicate, don't get on the train, he's there, right? So I think that's fascinating, and to me, that one is the one that resonates with me, that particular story.
For most people,
yeah. I mean, they even made statues of him, right, in the Polynesian Culture Center, and I think Brigham Young University there's one, and then there's one that's like in the jungle, that's like a wooden one that you guys found?
It's at the Kahuku Sugar Mill.
Okay, gotcha.
It fell down. We found it laying in the grass. And you're like, oh, this is kind of an epic figure in the history of Hawaii. But the statue's not cared for, unfortunate. Yeah, an interesting statement. But I mean, all of that history that happened in that era is super interesting. And what's interesting to me is, now a documentarian, is I've kind of come to realize there's a ripeness to a story that's good for a documentary. If a story's too old, there's no archival material, there's no interviews to be had.
Right.
If the story's too new, then it's like there's nobody credible to really talk about the depth of the story. So this particular story ends up being about 110 years old, and marching back 110 years in time. and there's many scenes that we covered because there's so many different alternative theories. It's a lot to cover. It's a pretty dense movie in that sense.
Yeah.
And so we try to lighten it up with music and, things like that. But I think that we kind of are lucky that it's exactly at that ripeness. So our main interviewees are in their late 80s, early 90s. Several of them have passed away since we've shot this thing. And then the archival, there's newspaper stuff that we're getting back all the way to 1912 that substantiate the storylines, and it's significant amount of newspaper material. There's also, home movies and TV footage. So TV stuff is actually hard to get because a lot of the live stuff never, got kept.
Sure.
So we're lucky in that respect. And then in terms of the layers of making it more entertaining, because if you take a lot of material and you just throw it down, it's like, oh gosh, you feel like it's a PhD material. So very lucky to have Henry Capono.
Yeah,
legend in music in our state.
And he asked you if he could do the music, yeah?
Yeah.
Wow.
He heard about the project and he goes, can I help? And I'm like, yeah, heck yeah. I knew him. And
was he talking to you on the phone when he asked this, or was it in person?
I think we met for coffee.
Okay. Because I can imagine, if he's talking to you on the phone and he says, hey, can I do the music? And you're like, hang on a second. And you're like...
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe, but then you cover the phone, you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, no, he didn't actually come out that strong. He's like, hey, is there anything I can do to help? Because he's a very giving person.
Of course.
And then you have to go through his wife, who's the gatekeeper.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
So Leslie is his business manager, his producer. She wears the pants. He wears pants too, but
she tells him which ones to put on.
She is for real lady, and I'll tell you, it took months to convince her because she is the gatekeeper.
Of
That's
course.
her role.
Okay,
and I became close with both of them. And Henry would not be Henry if it wasn't for Leslie. Behind every good man, there's a much stronger woman.
Absolutely,
she's that strong woman, but she's also got a massive heart. And when they finally understood the vision for this piece, they were both like, let's go. And so Leslie says, well, what should Henry's title be? And she actually kind of amped it up to, well, he should probably be something like a music director. I said, done, because I could ask for no better than Henry and all of Henry's friends, because Henry has his own nonprofit that he celebrates new singers. So he brings along a lot of these kids that are coming up in the industry.
Yeah.
He wrote an anthem he actually wrote 4 original songs for our film. And one of them is the anthem. So he's got multiple artists on the anthem. And I'm
it's kind of like we are the world, right?
Yeah, our version of that.
And also it connects to the original quote that Auntie Paki said at the beginning of the film, right? About Hawaii, looking to Hawaii for the key to world peace, which is aloha.
Yeah.
You wrote a song that ties that back in, yeah?
Yeah, that's the anthem. It's called Power of Aloha.
I got you.
And we're going to run it in the credits in full. So it's basically a music video in the credits.
Gotcha.
And I just really wanted to have all of our musical talent visually signatured in the piece.
Gotcha.
And some of them don't relate. There's a slam poet that does one verse. His name is Kealoha. Super talented guy. But I can't put that in the picture because it doesn't work really well with images, right? So I want him to be seen. But there's a bunch of them in there that I'm super excited to see them really come up and out to this project. And,
I got you.
Yeah.
How did Brian Spicer get involved with this? He's been known for like Y50 and, NCIS in Hawaii and all that. And then also your director, Alex, right? He was chosen to be part of Disney's Indigenous Filmmaker Project, and so they just get excited about this and wanted to jump on board.
Well, 2 different ways. I actually hired Alex.
Okay.
Alex is early in his career.
Okay.
And he came by way of my editor. And Alex is just like young guy, talented. Went to film school at University of Hawaii. Most of our crew was from University of Hawaii. We built a crew of all local people.
Nice.
Because they're the ones that really know the story, and they happen just to be on an island. So when we need to pick up a camera and go, then we go. And we're lucky in this respect that the story is on our island. So we didn't have to travel far and wide for the story. We didn't go to 5 continents. We're pretty much on one. We're shooting a little bit here in California tomorrow for the surf stuff.
Right.
But Brian, he was a client. I was running a studio for the state, and that's kind of how I came into this
as
well. ID8 Studios. And so Brian was a client. He's rented our studio for some of their shots.
Gotcha.
And Brian just said, yeah, can I help? Because Brian is extremely helpful. He's like helpful. He's like the smartest, like sage person in the industry for us out there. I mean, his instincts are spot on, wicked spot on. And he's got all the gear gack because he owns the largest rental house on our island. It's called Sight and Sound Productions. And then along the way, he bought Island Sound, which is also the largest production house for audio recording. So Henry's gang was all in there. You know, like we got treated to just great gear on visual as well as the audio side. And so Brian's been a huge help. And every time I turn around and ask him a question, he comes up with something like, that's kind of juggernaut, philosophical way to think about this. Like we started playing some things forward and backwards. And one day he says, you ought to just play it backwards in time. And you'll see that in the film, right? And it's a challenge to be able to do that because people get disoriented. So you have to put in a lot of cues so that they obviously know you're going back in time. Yeah. And that's really happened. And he said, that's how you're going to save your best stuff to last, because you always have to have payoffs along the way.
Gotcha.
But your biggest payoffs have to hold the audience to the end of the picture.
That's why you opened with the Shaka contest. You opened with the Shaka.
Well, that's a little bit different vehicle.
But you also you have it at the end. And
it bookends the film.
At first, I was a little, I wasn't quite sold on it. But when you explained to me that how it's going to be used and how it's going to be changed slightly through voiceover and things like that, then it makes sense.
So the Shaka contest is a chance for me to demo all the different types of shakas there are.
Yeah.
You go back in time, you learn all the different shakas, you get to this contest in the end, you say, okay, there's 10 shakas in 10 different contexts. So now I know how to do it, when to do it, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. It's also my chance to make aloha visual at the end of the picture, because aloha is an intellectual construct. It's very heady because it requires words, but I want you to feel something in the end. So if I can have you hug it out, at the end of the Shaka contest, and you see this beautiful, almost wedding-esque type of luau atmosphere, then you get that vibe. I want tears in the end. I don't want thinking in the end.
I got you.
And then to frame the essential question on the front of the picture, we're doing a green room scene where people that are about to go on for the Shaka contest, essential question is, how do I throw a Shaka? So that's why the bookend piece. But in terms of the going backwards in time, that was really, Brian really framed that. And he's just go backwards in time, period. And I thought, wow, this is the whodunit of pictures on our island. I mean, with 5.0 under his belt, I don't know, 200 feature film. And Magnum PI and all these shows that he does where it's like the big chase scenes as at the end.
Yeah.
And that's in fact how the bulletin board scene comes up.
Okay.
And that's a vehicle throughout this picture, but he's essentially the crime board.
Gotcha.
So my whole thing with that was, if you're going to do a whodunit, own it. Do the crime board.
Yeah, I love the crime board. I think it's really cool, and I was happy to hear that it still is. You didn't destroy it; it's still there. So I think that could be used as a possible museum piece or something.
The
like that.
The Shaka Museum should have the crime board in there.
Absolutely, right? Absolutely. And it reminded me of kind of like a whodunit mystery thing, and it totally worked. It was fun and kind of Indiana Jones archaeological thing, where we're kind of tracing the whole journey. And the last question I had regarding your production for now is the beach, and how you got 1,000 people, and how did you coordinate 1,000 people to go fishing on the beach, and how did you guys even survive that? And that's just amazing to me. Logistically, it just seems like So tell me a little bit about that.
So every filmmaker wants to do a picture with 1,000. Cast, right?
Okay. So cast of 1,000.
Yeah, right. That's like the golden age of movies, and it just happened. We have a scene in our film that has 1,000 people in it.
Yeah.
And that wasn't our goal numerically, but it just ended up being that way. But it turns out that one of the more controlling Shaka origin stories is of this man that's a fisherman, and this particular thing called a hukilau is a fishing expedition that a whole town does. So this man is the fisherman for the village. He feeds all the people, yet he's a sustainability expert for his time, because he can't allow the reef to be fished out, otherwise there's no fish for future generations.
Gotcha.
And this particular event had been done in a big way from 1948 to 1963. And he was the guy that led it the whole way. So in 1948, in fact, there's a beach called the Hukilau Beach, and this is where we had it. It's owned by the LDS Church. And so they allowed us to go and do this. They had closed that Hukilau in 1963 because Polynesian Cultural Center opened.
They wanted people to go into the center instead of going out to the beach, right?
So this event hadn't been held in 60 years. But because of the importance of the story, they allowed it to happen. And in fact, I said there had been no emu pits. That's where you dig a hole in the ground and you bury a pig and you roast it in the ground with lava rocks.
Gotcha.
There hadn't been an emu pit on that property in 60 years. There have been small fishing expeditions, but nothing at the scale that we did. But we wanted to bring back the old scale of what the original ones were. The original Hukilau, the Grand Hukilau, was done in 1948, and there was a song called the Hukilau Song that was actually written for that first event by an artist named Jack Owens. And then the Hukilau Hula was invented as well. In fact, we had some of the women that were in the original in 1948.
Okay.
They danced in our Hukilau that last year.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it kind of completed. And what's cool about the Hukilau is when we look back at the archival stuff, it didn't look very different than what it looked like last year when we did it. Because people are wearing tank tops or shorts, and there's big nets and people are pulling the nets, and the configuration of how people stand in the water is the same. Some of our perspectives are different because we had 8-10 cameras out there, water cameras, drones. And so obviously a drone is different than what you would see in the land-based cameras of the 40s and 50s. But you really get that sense of that thing has not really changed. And for me, as a historical record, I want this to be very timeless. So we took great pains to not make this look like 2023, 24, this could look fresh. And that's the bulletin board thing achieves that, because it's kind of like the Gilligan's Island version of what you would do for archival. It's not the Ken Burns effect. It's not, the AI effect with cropped images and, all that kind of stuff. But it's really just really simple island style. Yeah. Nobody has shoes on.
And it works. It totally works. And I think it's unique. And I thought that was a brilliant choice, for sure.
Yeah, thanks.
And I have thoroughly enjoyed my time with you today.
Me too.
I look forward to future conversations. And, hopefully we can get out to your home in Hawaii and we can
You're invited.
Shoot some more BTS stuff and hang out, and while I'm there, maybe train with some martial arts friends of mine out there, and just help you guys as much as we can, because this is, I think, a fantastic project, and we're happy to be a part of it.
I appreciate
your
time. And so if you need one of those body things that you hit, me, I'll try. Yeah.
Oh, you're going to be my uke, the person
that is?
The person who receives all the techniques and everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
We got to keep you healthy until this thing is out in the world, right? So it's all good, brother. But thank you so much.
Thanks, buddy.
And to me, this represents aloha and mahalo manifested in your physical, in your hand, right? So this is kind of like the embodiment.
In your hand, your heart, your head.
For sure.
All the way down to your toes.
All the way.
Yeah. Thanks, buddy.
All right.
Aloha.
What a pleasure. Once again, William Christopher Ford with Steve Sue, and you're going to be hearing much more about him and his film in the next coming months, and it's going to be great. So stay tuned, and we'll see you next time.